Hey guys, it's Bryn with the Mama on the Rocks, and I'm here with Sam, who has been a member of our community since the OG community when it started as just a private page. And I actually sought Sam out after some comments she had made on a live video that I had done. And I was like, hey, I'm not a creeper, I promise. But you mentioned, working at a school and working with kids as a therapist. And I just think it's so important for us to kind of rely on each other's expertise. And then, of course, the more I got to know Sam, the more I found out she's actually helping to raise a child who's an extreme a child as well. And so it's such a different thing, as we all know, because there are many of us in this group who are extreme parents, and our jobs also work with extreme children. So it's just so different when we're at home. So what I wanted to talk to Sam about today is how do we incorporate some sensory stuff at home, especially for those of us that have to homeschool, virtual school, hybrid school, whatever kind of school that means they're at home sometimes, for both sensory seekers and sensory avoiders. So Sam, tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about what you do, and then we'll jump into the sensory stuff.
Okay. So I taught preschool previously and I was a nanny. And after I did that, I was like, well, why don't I use what I've been using and help other kiddos out? So right now I'm a behavioral specialist. I work in the homes and in the school and the community, just trying to help families and the kiddos and just get whatever they can out of it.
So what types of diagnoses do you typically see?
Right now, I literally see everything. I mean, before there was a lot of anxiety, but now I'm dealing with a lot of social pragmatic disorders. Um, Autism surprisingly has gone down a little bit. I feel like there's some other um, things coming into play. I feel like in kids, ADHD is always one of my big ones, and just in general adjustment disorders too. So I pretty much deal with it all.
Yeah, and I think that I'm glad you mentioned the adjustment piece too, because some of the other experts I've been interviewing for these that will be coming out over the next several weeks have also mentioned that adjustment and anxiety, both for kids and parents with COVID. I mean, we're almost a year in now, and it's just really affecting every part of our lives. And so I think it's important that we recognize that and we don't just easily dismiss it and excuse it and say, oh, well, I should be able to manage, because honestly, none of us are prepared for this.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about just whether sensory processing disorder has been diagnosed for your kiddo, or whether it's a kind of a co-occurring with autism, ADHD, those kinds of things are very typical. And so like in the 80%. So talk to me about, how does sensory stuff affect a child?
Oh.
And I know that's a big ask, but just give me some, like, what are some things you might see if your child is experiencing some sensory distress and it might mask itself as other things?
Yeah, so I honestly see it like co-occurring, like you said, like 90% of the
Yeah, yeah.
time. It's like there's other things going on. My kiddo right now, we're dealing with a combination of the hypersensitivity and, kind of needing a lot of that, like sensory, but then needing not of it. So it
Mm-hmm.
can be really challenging, as we see it. And I don't know, sometimes it's, you notice the change in behaviors and they're doing something that they normally wouldn't do. There's kind of excessive demands on them,
Yeah.
or even making demands of you, saying, I need this. And like that constant attention seeking is really big one. And it's like they can't always communicate what they need and what they want. So it's coming out in those ways.
Okay, so moms, I want you to hear that, rewind it and play it again for yourselves. So a lot of times now, to be clear, there are age specific times where your kid needing you all the time is just typical development. However, when it is not age appropriate, sometimes we just assume that they're a really needy kid, they're really whiny, they're really this or that or whatever, or it goes along with their diagnosis. But sometimes it is a sensory issue. It is a need that is not being met, or a feeling they are not able to articulate. So I think that's so important for us, because I know in our household, both my husband and I can, especially when we're trying to get something done, like just like I'm working or he's, doing a project or whatever. And that's when our kids like, I need this, I need it. And it, like, we go 0 to 100. And so I think it's important as parents for us to recognize that that's okay. Like, we get overwhelmed too. So let's start to look at what do sensory avoidant behaviors and sensory seeking behaviors look like, because a lot of times people think, well, you only have sensory processing if you're autistic. That's not true. And you only are sensory avoidant or sensory seeking. And that's actually highly untrue. The data supports that most often those overlap for people. And that's not even just people with that diagnosis. It's also like it can go hand in hand with anxiety. That I have a lot of sensory triggers that trigger my anxiety. So talk to me about what are the differences in sensory avoidant and sensory seeking? What would those look like?
Um, so the sensory avoidance, like a lot of times that I'm seeing it right now, is typically with food's a big one right now with like certain taste or smells, or even like textures and everything. So it's like cannot, and we had an episode where we had seafood and our son actually had to leave the table because he was gagging.
Yeah.
It was, and all it was, he was just smelling it and seeing it.
Yeah.
We weren't making him eat it or anything.
Mhm.
So that's a really big one, and just kind of, where it seems like they're withdrawing or isolating from something, it's not, they just really can't deal with that, something in that situation right there.
Yeah, and sometimes it's obvious. So there are some that cover their ears to loud noises. Even without a seizure disorder, some of them really struggle with bright lights or flashing lights. But sometimes it's not so obvious. So I'm really glad you brought up the food thing. That's something that can be very maddening as a parent when you have a kid that will only eat chicken nuggets. One of my good friends and one of our fellow experts, Amy Smith, who's a holistic nutritionist, she talks a lot about her son and how he literally eats like 5 foods and that's all he will eat. And she's like, listen, I said goodbye to that fight a long time ago because it's fine. He's growing. And so I think that's a place where it feels like we have a lot of societal pressures as moms to like fix healthy foods, make things all natural, make things whatever. But truly, the fact is that our kids are going to eat when they're hungry unless there's some sort of other impediment there. And the other thing is with textures, I think sometimes our kiddos, and there is data to support that they actually struggle to, my son, there was a section of time, he would chew meat and it didn't matter how small the bite was, he could not swallow it. Like he physically could not, it would trigger a gag reflex and he'd have to spit it out. And that drove my husband totally insane because he thought he was doing it on purpose and he was just being gross. I'm like, look, so of course I went to the research. So just understand that if you're experiencing these things in your household, there are kiddos that get very fixated on like a label. So I will never forget the day that my son's cereal bar company decided, you know what, we're going to just remarket this and it's going to look different. And sister, I saved those old boxes and I stuck them into the old box because he wouldn't eat it. He assumed that, of course this tastes different. No, it's the exact same thing. So those things are super crucial for us to like allow ourselves space. We're not failing. That's just part of it. So what about sensory seeking behaviors? What does that look like?
Definitely, with a lot of like fidgeting and stuff, needing to constantly hold something, grab onto something, even some of them make noise. The biggest thing that I've been talking to teachers right now, especially with everything, a lot of being virtual still, is, the kids are making noise in their classroom. Well, a lot of the kiddos need that. They need something do with their hands to do in the meantime. So, while we're seeing that as distracting, it's actually really helping them be focused. And 9 times out of 10, the teachers that I say it to, they're like, yeah, they know what they're doing. They know what's going on. So it's not taking away from their learning, but sometimes it's hard because it can be distracting to some of the other kiddos. So it's trying to find a balance. Okay, we can do this, but let's make sure we're not being completely distracting everybody else.
Right. And I think it's about providing differentiation opportunities for the educators, whether that be a homeschooling mom or a teacher that's got 30 kids in their class. And of course, there are things like flexible seating, using yoga balls, laying on the floor, sitting under your desk, the little kick pads underneath their desk, fidget things. But also outside of those sort of like practical things, there are logistical ways to help with that. Like for our son, we allow him to stand while he eats dinner. We allow him to stand while he works. He literally reads, sometimes laying upside down on the couch. That the vestibular stimulation can help them. The difference is noticing for your kid, if they're a seeker and they're running, climbing, punching, all these things, sometimes it's not about being mean. Sometimes they literally need that feeling, that reverb, that back into their body. So there are things that OTs and that behavior specialists like Sam can provide you with, like brushing. there are plastic brushes you can get that stimulate their nerves on their arms and legs and things like that, or joint stimulation where you're compressing the joints because that is giving them that release instead of punching their sister or something. So not to say that some of our kiddos don't go 0 to 100, because they sure do, but there are some times where they're just seeking that sensory input. I wanted to ask you, just in our household, something we've experienced, and our son definitely has both, but he's more of a seeker. And so he is going to jump off of everything. He is going to climb somebody's house if it's made of rocks and bricks. He is going to 100% like just do all that crazy stuff. And I've had to learn, like, it's fine. Like, if he breaks something, we'll go to the hospital. I don't know. Like, I mean, sometimes you kind of have to resign yourself to that. But for seekers and avoiders, I would love to hear you speak to how do we comfort them as parents? Because I think a lot of dads, especially, not always, but especially, struggle with how do like, my husband is not a hugger. He's not a physical, like, that's just not his MO. And so he really struggles to provide that for my son. Whereas I'm like, cuddle me, hug me, let me kiss your face off. Like, for me, that's just normal. So talk to me about how can we provide that for our kids when they really need to feel that kind of safety from us. But sometimes it's hard when they don't want us to touch them, or they need it so much that it's like, holy crap, get out of my butt.
And it's so hard. And I think that's one of the things that families have had the toughest time with, because it's like they want to set boundaries, but they also want to have their child feel safe and loved and wanted. And it's, finding what works for them. So a lot of it is trial and error. A lot of families that I've worked with, we've really tried some like low contact things like bumping elbows or fist bumps or something like that.
Yeah.
That can be, they're still getting a little bit of that contact, but it's not so much in your face.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that I've seen work. And a lot of the schools do it too, the teachers, that way there's kind of minimal contact going on. So
yeah, I think if you are monitoring it, okay. When we were kids, you and I are similar in age. When we were kids, we could straight up like WWE our brothers and sisters, and our parents weren't even in the same room. They're like, whatever, don't die. And obviously our parenting expectations are different these days, which is unfortunate. But that being said, I think there is a place for kids to roughhouse, and especially for our sensory seekers to get that out in a space that is safe for them. So my husband does MMA. He's a sensory seeker, though he wouldn't call it that. And so when he's overwhelmed and anxious, he wouldn't call it that either. He needs to punch something. He needs to, kick the punching bag, whatever. He has like his whole weight set up. So he'll just be like, I'll be back in 5 minutes. And he'll go literally just like bench press until his arms are jello. I clearly do not do that. That's not my thing. I'm gonna go eat a row of Oreos and I'll get back to you. But being able, even if it's something small, like you don't have to like manhandle your kids, but you can say, let's arm wrestle. We thumb wrestle in our house a lot. And let them kind of make it playful and fun. And of course, depending on their ability level, their age level, their maturity level, that's going to look different. But even our daughter, who's kind of rough and tumble like I was as a girl, she does that with my husband, and it's more I think organic for him than just like holding them for a long, because they're bigger now and it's not like normal thing to do. So give us some strategies. Like, what are some go-tos that if I had you come to my home as my behavior specialist and I was like, my kid will not freaking leave me alone, or he's always on his sister, like, what, help me, Jesus, like, what can I do? Because obviously he needs something and I am struggling.
And it's hard, and we go through that in my house. It's the same thing. And we actually joked with the kids once. We're like, you guys are in love with each other. You touch each other so much. And it's, they're not. And it's just, they're both very, they seek that sensory. And it's just finding those things, a lot of like hands-on activities, like we'll have them build forts, so it's like they're using blankets, they're using blocks, they're using chairs. Like, sometimes we have to get away from that, you're making my house a mess and oh my gosh, I want to strangle you.
Yes.
And kind of let them do it and give them those boundaries though. Like, okay, you're going to do this, but then, we're going to help clean up together.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really important. And it's really hard. I mean, myself, I struggle with that. It's like, I want them to be able to do those things, but I struggle with that chaos. And so it's, sometimes it's us letting things go and being okay with it.
Yeah, definitely.
but I mean, we literally, anything we can, my kids are big into building right now. So we got them hammers and nails for Christmas. Um,
Awesome.
Anything that they can do with their hands, like outside, that's like a big thing that I stress so much, because I think sometimes these kids are they're on the screens a lot. And, my biggest thing that I tell my families is get outside. I don't care if it's for 5 minutes for a walk, to throw a ball, to pick grass, let them do whatever they want.
Yes. And I will say, I'm the same, like you said. Clutter is a major anxiety trigger for me. Like I literally have to walk away, and it has reminded me now as I've been a parent. My mom, who's battled anxiety and depression her whole life, like that's one place that she really excelled, I think, as a mom, is she would just shut our doors. She would ask us to clean her rooms, but she would literally just close our doors, like, I can't with this. And that's just how it had to be. And honestly, I'm grateful for that now, looking back on it. And there are times where I'm like, all right, today's the day, like we're cleaning it up, and because I can't handle it anymore. And I use different terminology. I say, like, mommy feels loved when you pick your Legos up and they're not laying on the floor for me to step on, because that really stresses me out and I can't handle that. And so kind of reframing that the way so they're not hearing it like, pick this up or else, though sometimes I do say that. But I think what you said with the getting outside, we're very much an outdoors family, but it's like the dead of winter here, and it's cold and rainy and gross and just awful. But sometimes I will literally, we have a dog, and I will say, take this ball and go throw the ball for the dog for 5 minutes. And I might sit at the window where I can see him. I might drink hot coffee from the porch, but I didn't look, 5 minutes, don't talk to me. And so for that 5 minutes, I don't care if you throw the ball for 1 mile and you chase the dog the entire time, but I need you to not say words to me. Like, so sometimes it's creating a safe space for us too, right? Like it's not.
And I think sometimes they need those breaks and they don't even realize it. And as much as sometimes they want to fight it, it's like, you can tell when they start to get overwhelmed, and it's like, okay, you need a break. So it's, we do the same thing. It's like, we're not telling you, okay, go take a break. It's like, go do this, and then so you can calm yourself down or whatever.
Yeah.
It is, so.
And I will say too, and we have always, in every place we've lived, even when we lived tiny, we've always had like a kind of a calming area for our son. As a sensory seeker, we've always included some kind of like punching bag, pillow, something he could scream into, something he could hit and punch and kick and not get in trouble. It was, when I say safe space, I mean, he couldn't throw anything because he's a thrower. Well, he had soft things, so like stuffed animals, that was fine, but he couldn't have hardback books because he put holes in our walls throwing those. He shattered alarm clocks across certain, like, can't have that. Sensory swings have been good for him, and always we've had a rock climbing wall because my husband's a climber, so that has been really good for our son being a seeker. Even if he'll just climb it and jump down for that like jump 100 times in a row. So talk to me about some things that are good sensory items, or things we can make at home or we have at home in our pantry or something that would be good to just kind of have like a go-to. Hey, it seems like you're overwhelmed. Go grab this for 5 minutes or whatever.
We're big on boxes, any shape and size. They love building them, knocking them down, making stuff out of them. So I think that's, save the boxes. As much as it drives us nuts with the clutter, it's nice for them to have, and they can kind of feel like they're in control for that minute.
Oh yeah, that's smart and free, which I love.
So we do a lot of that. Again, being outside, there's so many things, sometimes it's like, okay, let's race to see who can pick up the most sticks or something like that. Like anything, it's kind of limitless at this point. It's just anything that you really have around, make a game. I think we found that making a game out of it definitely is beneficial
for sure
in that way. But
we have, our daughter goes to forest school, and they're big on making fairy gardens, which I thought, how can I incorporate my son without him being like, Mom, seriously, I'm not playing with fairies. So he got his like action figure superhero guys and made like he called them something different, forts or castles or whatever, who knows. But they have like, we literally have these 2 little mulch patches, like small, on either side of our door. And even in the dead of winter, like even if it's muddy, I don't care. Like get an outfit that you can get muddy all the time. And they will dig in the mud. They will make food out of mud and sticks and mulch and whatever for these little things they're playing with. And that different sensory stimulation for their hands is really good. Even though they're not throwing it, they're just feeling it.
Using it, yeah. We make potions. That's what they call it.
Oh, love that. One thing.
Sure.
Yes. Don't throw expired things out of your pantry. So this is something, and I am not like, I will tell you again, mess and clutter. Ooh, that takes me 0 to 100. But one day, I think I was wrapping gifts before Christmas, and I had gotten some stuff out to make cookies. And I noticed our son is gluten-free, and I had 2 bags of gluten-free flour that had gone bad. And so I literally gave each of my kids a bag of flour, and I said, I don't care what you do with this. You can build with it. You can throw it on each other. I don't care. But go outside for whatever. And we always use a timer because visual is always super important for our son. Otherwise, he's going to ask me 5,200 times, is it time yet? Is it time yet? How many minutes left? And that's another way to give them, to empower them, is to let them set the timer or let them hold the timer or put the timer somewhere they can see it. But just little things like that, dry beans. I mean, and again, I don't let that in my house. My kids know Play-Doh. I gag at that. Like, you can't have Play-Doh in my house. Sorry, that is a no-go. But they play it on the porch all the time. And so, and that's fine because I can sweep that crap out, you know? And so I think anywhere, like, protect yourself as the parent, right? As the caregiver. If that's something that's triggering for you, be aware of that. But, and I know it's triggering for me, so we don't do it in the house, but I will send them outside in a hot minute. Like, you have 15 minutes at the table outside. I don't care what you build, but build something. I'm going to come and find who built me the tallest thing, or who built me the thing that's most creative, or whatever. And sometimes I'll give them a prize or a piece of candy, or, you know, something, some kind of little treat. And so, yeah, I love that you say that, like, make it fun, make it a competition, but sometimes it's honestly to save our own sanity, and that's okay. Just like sometimes we're like, I don't care if you're on your iPad again, because seriously, I can't talk to you for one more second. Like,
And I think that's important. You know, we all kind of had designated somewhere in the house as our safe area, and everybody knows where it's at. If we're in that area, we need a couple minutes. Don't talk to us, just leave it alone. And it took a little while for everybody to recognize that, but now it's like, we know if someone's in their spot, just let them go, and if they need something, they'll come and ask. So it's,
oh,
I
I
think
love
that's really
that.
important to stress too.
So what do safe areas look like in your house? Because that's an awesome idea.
So they're usually just, typically they're in the corners. Like, we have one in the living room. It's just a bunch of blankets and stuff. Because the kids will typically, and I can tell when they're starting, they'll kind of hide in the blanket. And that just kind of is their sign, like, hey, I need a minute. And they just kind
Yeah,
of look out the window. We have a couple other ones like downstairs that just have a bunch of soft stuff around. So
yeah,
it's, you know, just anything that they kind of need
yeah,
to
definitely.
minute. So
Yeah, and the last thing I would want to talk about is just incorporating some kind of a scale to, and this is for any diagnosis and no diagnosis. Just everybody gets angry sometimes, everybody gets triggered sometimes. So I think it's important to incorporate whatever works for your child. And some of the freebies this month that I'm going to post are going to be charts and scales and things like that, just as like, make it what works for you. If you haven't already downloaded the free discipline course, there are some charts in there for you to print. We use a 1 to 4 scale and in our house because my son loves math and numbers, and that works for him. And it has little Lego heads because Legos are like his thing. And so this morning already, he's been like, I'm at a 3. And so what's been like kind of interesting about that is, even though I didn't intentionally like develop that language for myself, he will say, like yesterday, I was getting really frustrated with him, and I said, can you look at my face right now? What do you think I'm feeling? And he goes, you're at a 3. I said, yes, I'm at a 3. So the more we can make that kind of common knowledge and common language in your household, that's an easy way for them to verbalize without feeling even more stressed because they're like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm just mad, or I just want to throw something.
that's one of the biggest thing I've seen, you know, whether I'm dealing with, you know, a younger kiddo with some behavioral issues or my older kiddos with some emotional stuff going on. It's finding what works for you. You know, I have families that will use like different superheroes.
Yeah.
You know, when they're feeling really escalated, the Hulk is, you know, that's what they're
Yes.
feeling right now. I have ones that use colors. So I think that's a really important, because a lot of times they don't know how they're feeling, or they're saying, I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. And it's hard to put into words sometimes
Yeah.
how you're feeling. So or even, you know, I have little ones that will, I'm like, draw how you feel right now, or draw me, you know, something. So any way that works and, you know, can be consistent, I think is definitely great.
Yeah. And I would say, I wanted to mention, going back to that safe space, is when we lived tiny, our son and daughter shared a room. And of course, at those ages, they were very young. They thought that was the coolest. When we have rented this house, they now have separate rooms, which was both for safety and sanity. And that is a safe space for them, not only if they're escalated, but like if they're playing together, they know like they can't go in each other's rooms if the other person isn't already there, because that's off bounds, that's out of bounds, off limits. Same with my husband and I's room. You don't need to be in here if we're not in here. And that's not because there's something dangerous or crazy. It's just sheer respect. And I think that's a really good thing for them to learn. And it helps them, going back to that chaos and mess piece, to take ownership of their space. So we will, instead of saying like, clean your room, I'll say, can you respect your space, please? And so sometimes just the way you verbalize that to them can empower them rather than make them feel like they have to do something. And look, it's not going to always work. I'll just be straight up with you. There are 1 million Legos in his floor right now, I promise. But, you know, when I get to a place where I can't anymore, he also recognizes like, can't handle it, can't do it.
Smart.
So I think let's just to kind of summarize, because you guys know, just as a teacher, like I want to give you like practical points. So some of the takeaways from today are kind of recognize both as a parent and your children, are they sensory seekers or avoiders? And even if there's an overlap, which are they most prone to? Think of some practical ways that you can provide an outlet for those avoidant behaviors or those seeking behaviors. Is there a pillow they can punch? Is there something they can scream into? Because sometimes they need to do that. If they're making, which ours does this, if they're making a noise because they're seekers and they need that kind of, sometimes it's the stimulation in their throats, just making a humming noise or whatever, but it's driving you crazy, because trust me, I want to chop my own ears off sometimes. Where is a place they can do that without driving you nuts? Like creating some kind of a de-escalation chart. So tell me where you are. Are you a 3? Are you Hulk? Are you red? What are you? So you can provide for them what they need, and then creating that safe space. I think that's so important, because we need that as adults, right? Like I need time away. A lot of times it's in my car, because then I'm like, go inside, mommy needs 5 minutes, and they're less likely to come out and bother me. And so I think that's important for us as adults. It's very easy to expect our children to display adult behavior, but they can't. That's just fact. That's science. Like they do not have the cognitive ability, regardless of their diagnoses. Like just a neurotypical child at age 16 cannot express, cannot function, cannot cope in the same way a 46-year-old can. You can't. And so us expecting that, I think sometimes is setting them up for failure and setting us up for disappointment. And so I think that's pretty crucial for both of us to recognize, and for us to kind of give grace to each other. Sam, anything else you want to add?
I don't think so.
I love having you in this group, and I am so grateful for all of the tips that you share and all the times that you say, oh my gosh, me too, because sometimes I'm like, okay, good. Well, she does this for a living, so if she's struggling with it, then I'm not totally crazy. And truly, I think that's like where the power lies sometimes, because we think we're the experts and we're supposed to know. And gosh, when we're at home, it's just different. Right. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm certain we'll have you on here again. So I'm so grateful for you, and just looking forward to talking to you again in the future.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.